Why OpenAI just declared code red. Sam Altman sent a memo to everyone at OpenAI, and the message was clear, and it was urgent. Code red. The company that basically invented the AI race and built ChatGPT and convinced the world that artificial intelligence was the future is now telling its employees that they're losing and they need to fight back or risk getting crushed. This happened because Google just did something that OpenAI didn't see coming, and it's working, and users are switching, and the numbers are getting worse every week.
This is especially important for Google, where AI, it's not just a standalone product, but its AI has to run inside of search.
And what makes this really interesting is that OpenAI has billions of dollars and the best AI researchers in the world and the most recognizable product in the space. And they're still panicking because Google didn't just build better AI. They did something that OpenAI can't copy, no matter how much money they raise or how many breakthroughs they make. And that's what the code red is really about. This isn't just corporate drama. This is what happens when you invent a market and then realize you don't control the thing that actually matters. What Google just did. In early December 2024, Google launched Gemini 3, and it was a massive upgrade over their previous version. The improvements were immediately obvious. Better reasoning, more helpful responses, and most importantly, much better image generation. Google also introduced a new image model with a ridiculous name, Nano Banana Pro, and it was producing images that looked more realistic than anything OpenAI had. Early users started comparing the two systems side by side, and the results were clear. When you asked both AIs to generate the same image, Google's version had better details, more realistic lighting, and it could actually render text inside images without mangling the letters. OpenAI image generator had always struggled with small details and text, and the gap between the two was now obvious to anyone who tested them. This wasn't just about image quality. Google's text responses also felt more natural and less filtered. Users reported that Gemini 3 was giving them more useful answers without as many safety disclaimers and refusals. It felt like talking to something that wanted to help instead of something that was worried about getting in trouble. The impact was immediate. Downloads of the Gemini app surged.
I have never seen growth in any company, one that I've been involved with or not, like this, like the growth of ChatGPT. It's really fun. I feel like deeply honored.
People who had been using ChatGPT for months started trying Google's version, and a lot of them stayed. And this is where the problem for OpenAI really starts, because in tech, the most dangerous moment is when users realize they have options. Third-party analytics firms that track app usage started reporting something concerning for OpenAI. ChatGPT's daily active user growth was flattening. It wasn't declining exactly, but it had stopped growing at the rate it had been. And when you're a startup burning billions of dollars every quarter, you need growth to justify your valuation. Flat growth is basically the same as decline. Even more concerning was that the average time users spent in ChatGPT per session started dropping. This wasn't because people were less interested in AI. It was because they were splitting their time between multiple AI apps. Google was taking a piece of OpenAI's user base, and that piece was getting bigger every week. Market share estimates showed the trend clearly. OpenAI was declining, and Google was rapidly gaining users. And these weren't just casual users checking out the new thing. These were people who had been loyal ChatGPT users, realizing that Google's version might actually be better for what they needed. Why OpenAI is panicking? The usage trends were bad enough, but OpenAI's financial situation made everything worse. The company is losing enormous amounts of money every quarter. Most ChatGPT users pay nothing. They use the free version, and OpenAI absorbs the computational costs of running their queries. Only a small percentage of users pay for the premium subscription, and that revenue doesn't come close to covering the company's expenses. OpenAI depends heavily on venture capital funding. They need investors to keep believing in the long-term vision because the short-term reality is billions of dollars in losses. And when your user growth starts to flatten while your competitor surges, that makes investors very nervous. This is why Sam Altman declared code red. The internal memo told employees that they needed to refocus on making ChatGPT better, or they would lose their market position. There was reportedly talk about finally introducing advertising to generate revenue, but that plan got postponed because of the code red situation. The thinking was that they needed to fix the product first, before they tried to monetize it more aggressively. So OpenAI did what companies do when they panic. They rushed out a new flagship model. They announced it as the most advanced AI model in the world. They pushed it to users quickly to show that they were still leading the race in capability and innovation. But users immediately noticed problems. The new model felt overfiltered. It gave too many safety disclaimers. It refused to answer questions that the previous version would have handled fine. The conversational flow felt worse, not better. People started complaining that OpenAI had made their product worse in an attempt to make it safer and more controlled. It looked exactly like what it was, a reactionary update pushed out in response to competitive pressure, instead of a genuine breakthrough. And when you're the company that's supposed to be leading the AI revolution, putting out a product that feels like a step backwards is a really bad signal to send to your users and your investors. OpenAI also released an updated image generation model to compete with Google's Nano Banana Pro. The new version was definitely better than what they had before. Images looked more detailed and the model handled text slightly better. But when users compared it directly to Google's version, OpenAI was still behind. Google's images held up under close inspection. OpenAI's images still had tells, little details that gave away that they were AI generated. The problem money can't solve. Here's where OpenAI's real problem becomes clear, and it's not something they can fix by building better technology or raising more money. Google has structural advantages that OpenAI simply cannot replicate. Google is owned by Alphabet, which is one of the most profitable companies in the world. Alphabet generates massive cash flow from its search advertising business. That means Google can afford to lose money on AI indefinitely. They're not burning through venture capital hoping to reach profitability before the money runs out. They can play the long game and wait for the market to mature. OpenAI doesn't have that luxury. Every quarter they're losing money is a quarter where they need to convince investors that it's worth it. And the longer the losses continue, the harder that pitch becomes, especially when competitors with deeper pockets are gaining ground. But the really insurmountable advantage Google has is distribution. Google Search is used by billions of people every day. Android devices run on billions of phones. Google Docs and Sheets and Gmail are built into how millions of people work. Google can integrate Gemini directly into all of these products that people are already using. This means Google doesn't need to convince you to download a new app or visit a new website. They can just add AI features to the tools you're already using, and you'll encounter Gemini naturally as part of your normal workflow. That's distribution that money can't buy because it was built over decades. OpenAI has to fight for every user. They have to convince people to specifically choose ChatGPT and remember to use it and keep coming back. Google just has to make Gemini available where people already are. That's a fundamentally different game. And there's another advantage that's hard to quantify, but incredibly important. Google can be patient. If AI doesn't become immediately profitable, that's fine. They'll keep investing and improving and waiting for the right moment. OpenAI is on a clock. Their investors expect returns. Their employees expect the company to eventually become sustainable. The pressure to monetize is constant. This creates different incentives. Google can focus on making the best possible product because they're not desperately trying to convert users into paying customers. OpenAI has to balance product quality with monetization pressure. That's why they keep trying to figure out how to introduce ads or push more people to premium subscriptions. They need revenue, and they need it soon. The bets that could save them. OpenAI isn't giving up, obviously. They've made 3 big bets on areas where they think they can still win even against Google's structural advantages. The first bet is becoming an AI cloud provider. The idea is that instead of just offering ChatGPT to consumers, they would offer the underlying AI models to other companies who want to build AI features into their own products. This is similar to how Amazon Web Services rents out computing power. OpenAI would rent out AI capability. The problem with this bet is that OpenAI doesn't actually own data centers. They run their AI on Microsoft's cloud infrastructure through a partnership deal. So they'd essentially be reselling access to someone else's infrastructure. Google and Amazon and Microsoft all own their own data centers and can offer AI services directly. OpenAI would be competing at a disadvantage in a market where the other players control the actual hardware. The second bet is launching a consumer AI device. This would be a physical product, potentially something like a smart assistant or a wearable that has AI built in. The thinking is that if they can get hardware into people's homes or pockets, they create their own distribution that doesn't depend on apps or websites. This is a risky bet because the history of AI hardware is mostly a graveyard. Remember Amazon's Fire Phone, Google Glass, Facebook's Portal? There have been countless attempts to create AI-powered consumer devices, and almost all of them failed. The ones that succeeded, like Amazon Echo and Google Home, succeeded because they came from companies with existing distribution and ecosystems. OpenAI doesn't have that. The third bet is automating scientific discovery. The idea is that AI could accelerate research in fields like drug development or materials science by helping scientists analyze data and generate hypotheses faster than humans can alone. If OpenAI could prove that their AI leads to actual scientific breakthroughs, that would be enormous for their reputation and their valuation. But this bet has a fundamental problem. Even if it works, and AI does help accelerate scientific discovery, that doesn't necessarily translate into revenue for OpenAI. The scientists and pharmaceutical companies and research institutions doing the actual work would capture most of the value. OpenAI would just be providing the tool. And if the tool is valuable, Google can build their own version with better distribution to scientists through Google Scholar and Google Cloud. This is the pattern that keeps appearing. Even when OpenAI comes up with a clever strategy, Google can copy it and execute it better because of their structural advantages. And that's what makes the code red situation so difficult. It's not clear what OpenAI can do that would actually change the fundamental dynamics. What this actually teaches us. The OpenAI versus Google situation reveals something that plays out over and over in technology markets. Being first doesn't mean winning. In fact, being first often means losing, because you prove the market exists, and then companies with better distribution come in and take it from you. Look at social media. MySpace was first. They were huge. Everyone had a MySpace page. Then Facebook came along, and within a few years, MySpace was irrelevant. Why? Because Facebook had better distribution through college networks, and then through everyone's real identity, which made the network effect stronger. Look at search engines. Yahoo was the dominant search engine before Google. AltaVista and Ask Jeeves were big names. Google was late to that market. But Google had a better product, and more importantly, they had a better business model with targeted advertising. They took over the market completely. Look at web browsers. Netscape Navigator was the browser that won the early internet. Then Microsoft came along and bundled Internet Explorer with Windows. They had distribution through the operating system. Netscape couldn't compete with that, even though their browser was arguably better. Microsoft didn't even need the best product. They just needed to be good enough and be everywhere. The pattern is consistent. The first mover builds the market and proves people want the thing. Then a competitor with structural advantages, usually distribution or infinite capital or both, comes in and takes the market. The first mover either dies or gets acquired or becomes a niche player. OpenAI is learning this lesson right now. They invented the consumer AI race. They convinced hundreds of millions of people to try AI assistants. They proved the market was real. And now Google is using advantages that OpenAI can't match to take that market away from them. This isn't about which company has smarter engineers or better technology. Both companies have brilliant people. Both companies are pushing the boundaries of what AI can do. This is about infrastructure versus innovation. And in tech markets, infrastructure almost always wins. Distribution beats innovation. Deep pockets outlast breakthroughs. Patience defeats urgency. These aren't satisfying truths, but they're consistent truths. The companies that win are the ones that can afford to lose money while they build market share, and who can put their product in front of users without asking users to go out of their way. OpenAI's code red moment is really about recognizing that they're playing a game where the rules favor their competitor. And changing the rules isn't an option. The only question is whether they can find a different game to play before they run out of money and investors lose faith. Where this goes next. Right now, OpenAI is trying to raise another massive funding round. They're seeking a valuation over $100 billion. That's an enormous number for a company that's losing billions of dollars every quarter and whose market share is declining. Whether they get that funding depends on whether investors believe the long-term story. Can OpenAI's 3 big bets pay off? Will they find a way to monetize their user base before Google takes too much of it? Can they innovate fast enough to stay ahead despite having worse distribution? The stakes for this funding round are higher than usual because OpenAI has also made massive commitments to cloud infrastructure providers like Oracle. They've essentially promised to rent enormous amounts of computing power to run their AI systems, and those contracts are worth billions of dollars over multiple years. If OpenAI can't raise enough money to cover those commitments, they could face serious financial problems. There are already reports that some third-party financiers who were helping fund OpenAI's data center commitments have gotten nervous and pulled their backing. This means the financial risk isn't just contained to OpenAI anymore. It's spreading to their partners and suppliers. When that happens, it creates a cascade effect where everyone starts questioning whether the company can actually deliver on its promises. And the timeline matters here. OpenAI can't just keep raising money forever while losing billions every quarter. At some point, investors will want to see a path to profitability, or at least a path to breaking even. Right now, that path isn't clear. The company postponed its advertising plans because of the code red. Their premium subscriptions aren't growing fast enough to offset costs. Their enterprise business is growing, but not fast enough to change the fundamental math. This means OpenAI probably has somewhere between 18 to 24 months to prove that their strategy works. That's not a lot of time when you're trying to build an AI cloud business and develop consumer hardware and automate scientific discovery, all while defending your core ChatGPT product against the richest company in tech. Google doesn't have any of these time pressures. They can keep investing in Gemini for 5 years or 10 years, or however long it takes. They can lose money on it indefinitely because it's a tiny fraction of Alphabet's overall business. That patience is a weapon that OpenAI has no defense against. These are hard questions, and the answers aren't obvious. What is obvious is that OpenAI is no longer guaranteed to win. The company that started this race is now fighting to stay in it. And the competitor they're fighting has advantages that have nothing to do with how good the technology is. That's what the code red is really about. It's not just about building better AI. It's about recognizing that in tech markets, the best product doesn't always win. The product with the best distribution wins. The company that can afford to be patient wins. The ecosystem beats the startup. This is the part of tech competition that doesn't make it into the headlines. Everyone wants to talk about breakthroughs and innovation, and which AI can pass which test. But the actual competition is about supply chains and distribution networks and cash flow and who can lose money longer. That's less exciting, but it's what determines who's still standing when the dust settles. So when you see OpenAI announcing new features, or raising more money, or making bold claims about what's coming next, remember what's actually happening underneath. They're fighting a battle where their opponent controls the terrain, and history suggests that's a very hard battle to win. If you found this interesting, consider liking the video and sharing it with someone who follows tech news.